The next discovery came as more of a surprise. Those who imagine that drug and alcohol problems mainly affect...
We dive deep into the untold truths surrounding Princess Diana's tragic death. Her sudden passing in a Paris car crash left the world in shock. But decades later, questions still linger. Was it a simple accident? Or is there more beneath the surface? Now, for the first time, Diana's personal bodyguard breaks his silence, revealing key details from that fateful night and addressing long-standing rumours. Join us as we explore his shocking revelations, unravel the mysteries surrounding her final moments, and attempt to uncover what truly happened to the people's princess. The tragic death of Princess Diana on August 31st, 1997, remains one of the most shocking and mysterious events of the late 20th century. For over 2 decades, the world has struggled to fully comprehend the circumstances surrounding her fatal car crash in Paris. As new revelations surface, and key figures like her former bodyguard, Ken Worf, and crash survivor, Trevor Rees-Jones, share their insights, the picture becomes increasingly complex. The fateful night was a convergence of poor decisions, miscommunications, and reckless driving, leaving lingering questions about whether it all could have been avoided. Ken Worf's criticism of security measures. Ken Worf, who served as Princess Diana's personal bodyguard for several years, has openly criticised the security arrangements that were in place during her final days. He has expressed his firm belief that had his team been on duty in 1997, Diana's life might have been saved. According to Worf, the security measures in place that night were inadequate and, in some cases, even negligent. Worf's criticisms centre on Trevor Rees-Jones, the bodyguard assigned to Diana and Dodi Fayed at the time of the crash. Worf believes that Rees-Jones should have been more assertive and intervened in some of the decisions made that night, particularly the choice to allow Henri Paul, the head of security at the Ritz Hotel, to drive the car despite suspicions that he had been drinking. Paul's blood alcohol level was later revealed to be over the legal limit, a factor that undoubtedly played a significant role in the crash. Worf's frustration stems from the fact that he would have insisted on a different course of action, one that could have prevented the entire tragedy. Worf also pointed to a broader issue with the way security was handled under Dodi Fayed's direction. He noted that Dodi had a tendency to make spontaneous decisions without consulting his security team, a habit that created a volatile environment. This lack of clear communication between Dodi, the hotel staff, and the security personnel that night likely contributed to the confusion and poor decision-making that led to the fatal car ride. Chaos in the tunnel. In the moments immediately following the crash, a chaotic scene unfolded in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The paparazzi, who had been pursuing the car, arrived at the wreckage within moments. Some of them began taking photographs of the destroyed vehicle and its occupants, an act that has since been widely condemned as ghoulish and insensitive. Others, however, tried to assist the victims, though it was clear that the situation was dire. Princess Diana was still alive, though in critical condition, as rescuers worked to extract her from the wreckage. Despite suffering from severe internal injuries, she was conscious and even spoke briefly before losing consciousness. Emergency medical teams arrived on the scene within minutes, but Diana's injuries were extensive. Her chest had been crushed in the crash, pushing her heart out of its normal position and causing a fatal tear in a pulmonary vein. Henri Paul and Dodi Fayed were not as fortunate. Both men were killed instantly upon impact. The crash had left the once sleek Mercedes a mangled, twisted wreck, barely recognisable as the luxury vehicle it had once been. The noise of the crash had echoed throughout the tunnel, drawing the attention of nearby witnesses who rushed to the scene, horrified by the devastation before them. Rescue workers quickly realised that Princess Diana's condition was critical. They extricated her from the car and rushed her to the nearby Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital, where doctors fought to save her life. Despite their best efforts, Diana succumbed to her injuries a few hours later, and the world was left reeling in grief. Controversy and aftermath. The aftermath of the crash was marked by controversy and accusations, as investigators tried to piece together what had gone wrong. The role of Henri Paul came under intense scrutiny, with toxicology reports indicating that he had been under the influence of alcohol at the time of the crash. Questions were raised about why he had been allowed to drive the vehicle in the first place, particularly given the importance of the passengers he was transporting. Kenworth's criticisms of the security arrangements were echoed by other experts who pointed to a series of failures that contributed to the tragedy: the decision to use an underqualified driver, the high-speed chase through Paris, and the failure to ensure clear communication between Dodi and his security team all combined to create the perfect storm that led to the crash. For Trevor Rees-Jones, the aftermath of the crash was both physically and emotionally devastating. He spent months in the hospital, undergoing extensive reconstructive surgery on his face. His injuries were so severe that doctors had to use old family photographs to rebuild his facial features. Although rumours circulated that he had lost his tongue in the crash, these were unfounded. Though his jaw had been shattered, Rees-Jones eventually regained the ability to speak, albeit with great difficulty. In the years since the crash, Rees-Jones has remained a largely private figure, his memory of the events leading up to the crash limited by the trauma he endured. According to expert witnesses who testified during the official inquiry into Diana's death, Rees-Jones's recollection of the moments before and after the crash is fragmentary. He remembers getting into the car and its initial movement, but the impact itself and much of what followed are a blur. The official investigation into Princess Diana's death ultimately concluded that the crash was the result of a combination of factors: reckless driving on the part of Henri Paul, the pursuit by the paparazzi, and the failure of the security team to properly protect Diana and Dodi. Despite this conclusion, conspiracy theories have continued to circulate, with some believing that Diana's death was not an accident, but the result of a deliberate plot. Trevor Rees-Jones. Soul. The survivor and his fragmented memories. One of the key figures in the events leading up to the crash is Trevor Rees-Jones, the bodyguard assigned to protect Diana and Dodi. Rees-Jones was the sole survivor of the crash, but his memory of the incident was severely impacted by the trauma he endured, leaving only fragments of the events that led up to the fatal collision in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Official investigations, including the 2004 Operation Padge inquiry into Diana's death, have largely accepted that Rees-Jones suffered memory loss due to the significant head injuries he sustained during the crash. He was knocked unconscious during the impact, his face shattered so severely that extensive reconstructive surgery was required. However, Mohammed Al-Fayed has always been sceptical of Rees-Jones's inability to remember the crucial moments leading up to the crash. He has suggested that Rees-Jones, far from being a victim of memory loss, was hiding vital information and possibly even complicit in a cover-up. Al-Fayed has gone as far as to allege that Rees-Jones was paid off by the British intelligence services to feign amnesia and suppress the truth about what really happened in the tunnel that night. These claims are part of Al-Fayed's broader belief that MI6 and the royal family had orchestrated the crash to prevent Diana from marrying Dodi and to avoid the possibility of a future stepfather to the future King of England being a Muslim. Al-Fayed's allegations of a conspiracy involving MI6. Al-Fayed's accusations didn't stop with Trevor Rees-Jones. He also pointed the finger at MI6, the British intelligence agency, and members of the royal family, particularly Prince Philip and Prince Charles. Al-Fayed has repeatedly asserted that the crash was not an accident, but a carefully planned assassination ordered by the royal family to prevent the marriage between Diana and Dodi. According to Al-Fayed, the royals were deeply opposed to the relationship, particularly because of Dodi's religion, and feared the impact that a union between a Muslim man and the mother of the future king would have on the monarchy. These claims were not new, but Al-Fayed continued to make them in increasingly public forums, culminating in a 2008 public inquest where he testified and named several high-profile individuals he believed were involved in the conspiracy. In a sensational testimony, Al-Fayed accused Prince Philip of being the mastermind behind the plot to kill Diana and Dodi, alleging that the Duke of Edinburgh orchestrated the operation with the full knowledge and cooperation of Prince Charles. According to Al-Fayed, Prince Charles wanted Diana out of the way to clear the path for his eventual marriage to Camilla Parker Bowles, his longtime companion and now wife, who became Queen Consort following Charles's ascension to the throne. Al-Fayed's list of alleged conspirators extended beyond the royal family. He also implicated Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister at the time, and several top officials within the Metropolitan Police, suggesting that they had all played a role in covering up the true nature of Diana's death. Al-Fayed even went so far as to suggest that the CIA had been involved, an accusation that has further fueled the fervour of conspiracy theorists who believe that Diana's death was not a simple car accident, but an international plot to silence her. The question of Diana's pregnancy. Another aspect of the conspiracy theories that surround Diana's death is the question of whether or not she was pregnant at the time of the crash. Mohammed Al-Fayed has consistently maintained that Diana was pregnant with Dodi Fayed's child and that the royal family was determined to prevent a Muslim heir from being part of the British royal lineage. According to Al-Fayed, Diana and Dodi had become engaged, and their impending marriage posed a threat to the royal family, who could not bear the idea of the mother of the future king marrying a Muslim man. These claims were bolstered by the fact that Diana's body was embalmed shortly after her death, a process that some conspiracy theorists have suggested was carried out to obscure evidence of her pregnancy. Critics, including Al-Fayed, have questioned why Diana's body was embalmed so quickly and before an autopsy could be conducted, arguing that this unusual procedure conveniently prevented any testing that could have confirmed whether or not she was carrying Dodi's child. Richard Belzer, a well-known conspiracy theorist, has echoed these concerns, claiming that the embalming of Diana's body was illegal under French law and that it effectively destroyed any evidence that could have been gathered about her pregnancy. However, investigations, including the exhaustive Operation Paget inquiry, have thoroughly debunked these claims. Blood samples taken from the crash scene and from Diana's body showed no evidence of pregnancy, and medical experts confirmed that it would have been possible to detect pregnancy hormones in the samples, even after Diana's death. Despite these findings, the theory that Diana was pregnant continues to persist among those who believe there was a larger plot at work. The role of Henry Paul. Was he an MI6 informant? Henry Paul, the driver of the car in which Diana and Dodi were travelling on the night of the crash, has also been a key figure in the conspiracy theories that have surrounded their deaths. Paul, who was the head of security at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, had a blood alcohol level that was 3 times the legal limit at the time of the crash, leading investigators to conclude that his impaired driving was the primary cause of the accident. However, conspiracy theorists, including Mohammed Al-Fayed, have questioned this conclusion, suggesting that Paul may have been more than just a hotel employee. Rumours have circulated for years that Paul was an informant for MI6 and that he may have been part of a larger plot to kill Diana and Dodi. These suspicions were fuelled by Richard Tomlinson, a former MI6 officer who claimed to have seen files indicating that Paul was indeed working for the British Intelligence Agency. According to Tomlinson, Paul's behaviour on the night of the crash raised several red flags, including his unexplained absence for several hours before he returned to the Ritz to drive Diana and Dodi. Tomlinson further alleged that Paul had a significant amount of money in his bank account, far more than his modest salary as a security manager could account for. Tomlinson speculated that this money was paid to Paul by M16 as part of his work for the agency, and that Paul may have been deliberately involved in the crash as part of the assassination plot. These claims were thoroughly investigated by Operation Paget, which found no evidence to support the theory that Henry Paul was working for MI6. The inquiry determined that the money in Paul's accounts came from legitimate sources, including his salary and rental properties that he owned. Furthermore, there was no indication that Paul had received any instructions or payments from a covert source on the night of the crash. Despite these findings, the theory that Paul was involved in a plot to kill Diana and Dodi continues to circulate among conspiracy theorists. The mysterious white Fiat and the flash before the crash, one of the most persistent and intriguing elements of the conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death, is the story of a mysterious white Fiat that was reportedly involved in the crash. Witnesses at the scene of the accident claimed to have seen a small white car, possibly a Fiat Uno, in the tunnel at the time of the collision. Investigators later found traces of white paint on Diana's Mercedes, suggesting that the two cars had made contact before the crash. However, the identity of the driver of the Fiat has never been definitively established, leading to speculation that the car may have been involved in a deliberate attempt to cause the accident. Some conspiracy theorists have suggested that the driver of the Fiat was James Anderson, a French paparazzo who was known to have been following Diana and Dodi in the weeks leading up to their deaths. Anderson, like Henri Paul, was rumoured to be an informant for MI6, and some believe that he played a role in orchestrating the crash. In a further twist, Anderson was found dead in his car in 2000, an apparent suicide that only added to the mystery surrounding his possible involvement in the events of that night. Mohammed Al-Fayed and others have pointed to the unexplained presence of the Fiat and the suspicious circumstances of Anderson's death as further evidence of a conspiracy. Witness reports from the scene also described seeing a bright flash of light just before the crash, a detail that has led to the flash before the crash theory. According to Richard Tomlinson, the former MI6 officer, a strobe light capable of disorienting drivers was a tool used in MI6 operations, and he has suggested that such a device may have been used to blind Henri Paul and cause the crash. Princess Diana's death, the tragic night and its aftermath. The death of Princess Diana on the night of August 31st, 1997, was a profound shock to the world, a moment of collective grief that froze millions in disbelief. Known affectionately as the People's Princess, Diana was a global icon of compassion and humanitarianism, deeply loved not just by the British public, but by people around the world. Her passing, in such a sudden and violent manner, seemed almost incomprehensible, and the events that followed highlighted the complex dynamics between the royal family, the media, and the general public. Mohammed Al-Fayed's allegations. At the heart of these conspiracy theories was Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, who refused to accept the findings of the French investigation. Al-Fayed firmly believed that the British establishment, including MI6, was responsible for the deaths of his son and Diana. According to Al-Fayed, the royal family could not tolerate the idea of Diana, the mother of the future king, becoming romantically involved with a Muslim man, let alone potentially marrying him. Al-Fayed's claims were not without foundation, at least from his perspective. He pointed to several suspicious elements of the crash, most notably the presence of a mysterious white Fiat Uno that witnesses claimed had been in the tunnel at the time of the accident. Traces of white paint were found on Diana's Mercedes, suggesting that the two vehicles had collided before the crash. Yet, despite extensive investigations, the driver of the Fiat was never identified, leading Al-Fayed to suggest that the car had been part of a premeditated plot to cause the crash. He also raised questions about Henri Paul's role, alleging that the driver had been an informant for MI6, the British intelligence service, and that he had been deliberately set up to cause the accident. Al-Fayed pointed to Paul's financial records, which showed substantial deposits in the months leading up to the crash, money that Al-Fayed claimed had come from MI6 as payment for his involvement in the plot. The British inquest and Operation Paget. In response to the growing number of conspiracy theories, and in light of the public's demand for further investigation, British authorities launched their own inquiry into Diana's death in 2004. Dubbed Operation Paget, the inquiry was tasked with examining the various allegations surrounding the crash, including those put forward by Mohammed Al-Fayed. Operation Paget, led by Lord Stevens, the former head of the Metropolitan Police, ultimately concluded in 2008 that there was no credible evidence to support the theory that Diana and Dodi had been murdered. The report confirmed the findings of the earlier French investigation, stating that the crash was caused by Henri Paul's reckless driving while under the influence of alcohol and prescription drugs. It also noted that neither Diana, Dodie, nor Rhys-Jones had been wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash, a fact that likely contributed to the severity of their injuries. While the report addressed many of the concerns raised by conspiracy theorists, including the question of Diana's alleged pregnancy, tests conducted after her death showed no evidence that she was pregnant. It did little to change the minds of those who believed that there was more to the story. Mohammed Al-Fayed, for one, refused to accept the findings, maintaining his belief that the British establishment had orchestrated the deaths of his son and Diana. The public reaction and global mourning. As investigations continued, the public outpouring of grief over Diana's death remained unabated. In London, thousands of mourners gathered outside Kensington Palace, laying flowers, candles, and personal messages in tribute to the princess. The scene was one of collective mourning, as people from all walks of life came together to remember Diana, not just as a royal figure, but as a symbol of kindness and compassion. The British monarchy, often seen as distant and reserved, faced immense public pressure to acknowledge the depth of the nation's grief. Queen Elizabeth II, criticised in the days immediately following Diana's death for her perceived coldness, eventually addressed the public in a rare televised speech. In it, she praised Diana for her warmth and her connection with people, acknowledging the profound loss that her death represented for both the royal family and the country. A tragic romance, Diana, Dodie, and the events that preceded the Crash Princess. Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed was a source of intense media fascination in the months leading up to their tragic deaths. Both the British press and the global media were captivated by their romance. Dodi, the son of Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed, had been a prominent figure in the media for years, known for his playboy lifestyle and involvement in film production. Diana, on the other hand, was the world's most famous woman, beloved for her charitable work, fashion sense, and her embodiment of kindness and compassion. Their relationship had begun in the summer of 1997, sparking endless speculation about the future of the couple. With both figures being constantly pursued by the press, their romance unfolded under the unforgiving glare of the paparazzi. In July of that year, the couple embarked on a romantic holiday to the French Riviera, hoping to escape the relentless scrutiny. Yet, even during this trip, the paparazzi followed them, capturing intimate moments that fueled even more rumours about their relationship. It was during this vacation that rumours of Diana's pregnancy started to gain momentum. The theory of Diana's pregnancy, a new royal heir? As the couple basked in the sun on Al-Fayed's yacht, photographs of Diana showed what some interpreted as a small baby bump. Witnesses also claimed that Diana had a radiant glow, leading many to speculate that she was expecting a child. The potential for a royal heir, especially one with ties to both the British monarchy and a Muslim family, captured the imagination of the media and the public alike. Headlines across the globe screamed with sensational claims that Diana was pregnant, adding a new layer of intrigue to an already intensely scrutinised relationship. Adding to this speculation was an interview given by Rosa Monckton, one of Diana's closest confidants. Monckton revealed that Diana had confided in her about her desire to have another child. She longed for a sibling for her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, both of whom were still adjusting to their parents' divorce. Monckton's account provided a level of credibility to the theory that Diana could have been pregnant. After all, she had spoken openly about her desire to expand her family, and it wasn't entirely unthinkable that she and Dodi might have been expecting a child together. The controversial embalming of Diana's body. One of the most mysterious elements of Diana's death involves the embalming of her body, which took place unusually quickly after the crash. French authorities embalmed Diana's body before a full post-mortem examination could be completed. This rapid embalming raised many questions, especially since it is not standard procedure to embalm a body so quickly after death. Critics and conspiracy theorists saw this as evidence of a potential cover-up, particularly concerning the rumours about Diana's pregnancy. If Diana had been pregnant, the embalming process would have made it nearly impossible to detect any signs of pregnancy through traditional medical tests. Adding to the intrigue was the fact that the French authorities failed to follow the usual procedures for a high-profile death investigation. The rushed nature of the embalming fueled suspicions that there was a deliberate effort to obscure or alter evidence, perhaps to conceal a pregnancy. However, it's worth noting that embalming was not an entirely unreasonable action given the circumstances. Diana's body had sustained significant injuries in the crash, and there was an understandable urgency to preserve her remains for her family to view before her funeral. Moreover, Diana's body had to be transported back to the UK, which likely contributed to the decision to embalm her sooner rather than later. The official denial and the British royal family's stance. Throughout the years following Diana's death, the British royal family has consistently denied any claims that Diana was pregnant at the time of her death. They have maintained that the rumours were nothing more than sensationalised speculation, fuelled by a public eager to believe in conspiracy theories. According to the royal family, there is no concrete evidence to support the idea that Diana was pregnant, and they have pointed to the findings of multiple investigations as proof. In fact, forensic scientist Professor Angela Gallop, who conducted a thorough investigation into the crash, documented her findings in her book When the Dogs Don't Bark, a forensic scientist's search for the truth. According to Gallop, blood samples taken from Diana's body following the crash showed no traces of the pregnancy hormone HCG. This hormone, which typically appears in a woman's blood approximately 11 days after conception, was absent from Diana's system, indicating that she was not pregnant. Gallup's investigation seemed to put the rumours to rest, as the results of the blood tests were negative, and there was no indication that Diana had been taking contraceptives at the time of her death. Mohammed Al-Fayed's claims and the allegations of a cover-up. Despite these medical findings, Mohammed Al-Fayed continued to assert that Diana was pregnant with his son's child at the time of her death. Al-Fayed, who has long maintained that Diana and Dodi were murdered as part of a plot by the British establishment, believed that the pregnancy was a key factor in the alleged conspiracy. According to Al-Fayed, the British royal family could not tolerate the idea of Diana, the mother of the future king, being romantically involved with a Muslim man, let alone carrying his child. Al-Fayed went so far as to instruct members of his staff to tell the media that Diana and Dodi had visited a villa he owned in Paris to choose a room for the baby. While it is true that the couple visited the villa, the circumstances of the visit were exaggerated. The visit, which lasted less than 30 minutes, was far from the detailed 2-hour session that Al-Fayed's staff initially described. Moreover, a security guard at the villa, Ruben Morel, later revealed that there had been no discussion about a baby or the couple living at the villa. Morel even provided CCTV footage to The Sun to back up his claims, which directly contradicted the narrative Al-Fayed had been pushing. Morel resigned from Al-Fayed's employment after the incident, citing constructive dismissal. Henri Paul, the driver at the centre of controversy. While conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's pregnancy dominated the headlines, another name was repeatedly mentioned in connection with the crash: Henri Paul, the driver of the Mercedes on that fateful night. Paul, born in July 1956 in Lorient, France, came from a modest background. His parents were hard-working individuals, his father a municipal worker, and his mother a teacher. Paul's life was marked by ambition and a love for adventure, particularly his passion for flying. He obtained his pilot's license in 1976 and logged over 600 hours of flight time, showcasing his adventurous spirit. Paul's career took him through various professions, from boat sales to running a private detective agency. However, his life took a significant turn in 1986 when he began working for the security department at the Ritz Hotel, which was owned by Mohammed Al-Fayed. While he wasn't officially a driver for the hotel, Paul was trusted with significant responsibilities, and on the night of August 31st, 1997, he was asked to drive Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed from the Ritz to Dodi's apartment. Before taking the wheel, Paul had reportedly been drinking, a fact that became a focal point of the subsequent investigations. Chemical tests revealed that his blood alcohol content was 3 times the legal limit in France, and traces of prescription drugs were found in his system. However, conspiracy theorists, including Mohammed Al-Fayed, claimed that Paul had been set up. They suggested that Paul had been working as an informant for French or British intelligence and was part of a plot to kill Diana and Dodi. While these claims have largely been dismissed by official investigations, the circumstances surrounding Paul's death continue to raise questions. CCTV footage from the Ritz showed Paul appearing sober and composed, which seemed at odds with the high levels of alcohol and drugs reported in his system. To this day, many believe that Paul was more than just a driver, and that his role in the events of that night remains shrouded in mystery. Henri Paul, the man behind the wheel. At the centre of the tragedy was Henri Paul, the man who found himself in control of the car that would ultimately crash, killing Princess Diana, Dodi Fayed, and himself. Born in Lorient, France, in July 1956, Henri Paul led a seemingly ordinary life, but the events of that fateful night cast him into a spotlight he likely never anticipated. Before working for the Ritz Hotel in Paris as the deputy head of security, Paul had pursued various professions, including running a private detective agency and selling boats. He was known for his competence, attention to detail, and an adventurous spirit that led him to earn a pilot's license in 1976. Despite his position at the Ritz, Paul was not officially employed as a driver. However, on the night of August 31, 1997, he was tasked with driving the black Mercedes that carried Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed from the hotel to Fayed's apartment in Paris. What should have been a routine journey turned into a catastrophe, as Paul was reportedly under the influence of alcohol and prescription drugs. In the aftermath of the crash, forensic tests revealed that Paul had 3 times the legal alcohol limit in his system, along with traces of Prozac and Thiopridol, medications used to treat depression and alcoholism. Robert Forrest, a forensic pathologist, later explained that alcoholics like Paul often have a higher tolerance, allowing them to appear more sober than they actually are. This detail was crucial in explaining how Paul might have seemed composed on security cameras at the Ritz, despite being severely intoxicated. Yet, the exact extent of Paul's drinking that night has been the subject of debate. Witnesses at the Ritz confirmed that Paul had consumed only 2 alcoholic drinks, Ricard, his favourite anise-flavoured aperitif. However, forensic experts later estimated that Paul had likely consumed the equivalent of 5 measures of Ricard before getting behind the wheel. In 2009, DNA testing confirmed that the blood samples showing high alcohol levels were indeed from Henri Paul, silencing rumours that the results had been tampered with. This revelation reinforced the narrative that Paul's impaired state contributed significantly to the fatal crash. The Mercedes S-280, a ticking time bomb. Another key element of the tragedy was the condition of the Mercedes S-280 that Henri Paul drove that night. Unbeknownst to Diana and Dodi, the car they were travelling in had a dark and troubled history. The vehicle, provided by the Ritz Hotel as part of their fleet, had been stolen earlier that year and had sustained significant damage before being recovered. The Mercedes had been involved in multiple accidents and was classified as a rebuilt wreck with serious mechanical issues. The vehicle's compromised state made it highly dangerous, particularly when driven at high speeds. Experts who examined the car after the crash discovered a series of defects, including faulty brakes and a malfunctioning steering system. These mechanical failures, combined with the high speed at which the car was travelling, reportedly up to 65 miles per hour, turned the vehicle into a death trap. The dangerous condition of the Mercedes raised serious questions about the responsibility of the Ritz Hotel in providing a safe vehicle for its high-profile guests. How could a car with such a troubled history be deemed fit for use? Why had it not undergone thorough inspections before being put back into service? These questions pointed to potential negligence on the part of the hotel, which faced intense scrutiny in the aftermath of the crash. While Henri Paul's intoxication and the reckless pursuit by the paparazzi were critical factors in the accident, the role of the faulty Mercedes cannot be overlooked. The car's mechanical issues undoubtedly contributed to the severity of the crash, and some experts believe that even a sober driver might have struggled to control the vehicle under such conditions. The revelation that the car had been a rebuilt wreck only added to the sense of injustice surrounding Diana's death. The ongoing impact and conspiracy theories. In the years since the crash, conspiracy theories have continued to flourish, with many refusing to accept the official version of events. Mohammed Al-Fayed has been one of the most vocal proponents of the theory that Diana and Dodi were murdered, possibly by British intelligence services acting on orders from the royal family. According to Al-Fayed, the couple's relationship and the possibility that Diana was pregnant with Dodi's child posed a threat to the British monarchy, which could not tolerate the idea of the future king's mother being involved with a Muslim man. While multiple investigations, including an exhaustive inquiry by the French and British authorities, have concluded that the crash was a tragic accident, the conspiracy theories persist. The mysterious white Fiat Uno, the involvement of the paparazzi, and the questionable condition of the Mercedes all continue to fuel speculation about what really happened that night in Paris. Princess Diana's death remains one of the most shocking and heartbreaking events of the late 20th century. The combination of a reckless chase by the paparazzi, an intoxicated driver, and a dangerously defective vehicle created a perfect storm of circumstances that led to the untimely loss of one of the world's most beloved figures. Yet, even as the official investigations have sought to provide closure, the lingering questions and the sense of unresolved mystery ensure that Diana's death will continue to be a subject of fascination, debate, and, for many, deep sadness. The pursuit and the mechanics of danger. As the Mercedes navigated the bustling Parisian streets, the atmosphere inside was tense. The car was under relentless attack from the lenses of photographers on motorcycles and in other vehicles, all desperate for that elusive, lucrative shot of the couple. What should have been a simple drive through the city turned into a high-speed race, with paparazzi inches away, ready to capitalize on any moment. The situation was fraught with peril, but it was the mechanical failures of the Mercedes that would ultimately seal their fate. Henri Paul, the driver, faced a formidable challenge. The Mercedes had a litany of mechanical issues that would soon prove catastrophic. When he attempted to slow down or stop the car, the brakes failed to respond adequately, leading to a terrifying loss of control. This alarming failure was compounded by severe deficiencies in the steering system. Reports indicated that the steering had a tendency to veer to one side, making it exceptionally challenging for Paul to maintain control, especially at high speeds. This deadly combination of faulty brakes and steering posed an imminent threat. And as they approached the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the stage was set for tragedy. The tyres on the Mercedes were equally concerning. They were worn down to the point where there was little to no tread left, making them highly susceptible to blowouts. In a moment where precision was crucial, these compromised tyres would further jeopardise the stability and control of the vehicle, particularly when navigating the sharp turns of the tunnel. The chassis, too, had suffered significant damage from previous accidents and reckless driving, compromising the structural integrity of the car. Such issues created a perfect storm, leaving Diana, Dodi, and Henri Paul vulnerable as they sped toward the tunnel. The engine of the Mercedes had also been pushed to its limits. With a history of relentless driving, often at high speeds, the car had undergone excessive wear and tear, putting additional strain on its already compromised mechanical components. It is nothing short of shocking to think that a vehicle with such severe mechanical defects could be deemed fit for use, especially by a prestigious establishment like the Ritz Hotel. The responsibility for ensuring the safety of its high-profile guests fell squarely on the shoulders of the hotel, and their failure to properly inspect and maintain the vehicle had catastrophic consequences. The legacy of questions and theories. Despite the official narratives that emerged from the investigations, the events of that fateful night remain clouded in mystery and controversy. The combination of mechanical failures, the intense pursuit of the paparazzi, and the unsettling witness accounts have kept the theories alive. Many continue to grapple with unanswered questions, pondering the potential involvement of external forces and the implications of what truly happened that night. Princess Diana's tragic death not only marked the end of an era for her and Dodi, but also sparked a global conversation about the nature of celebrity, privacy, and the responsibilities of those who pursue public figures. The events of August 31st, 1997, will forever serve as a reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind the flashing cameras and the pursuit of fame.